Greetings, it's the evening of August 16th, and this fellow may have heard that the evacuation orders southeast of 70 Mile House all the way up to Green Lake have been rescinded. That's some good news for a province that's declared a state of emergency yesterday. And if we jump over to the big bar cam from a little bit earlier, we can see one of the reasons why air quality has been greatly affected throughout the province. Here we can see a lot of haze in the sky. Jumping over to the Begbie cam, looking northwards towards 100 Mile House, we can see some horizon there, the kind of the rolling hills going into 100 Mile House. So conditions are varied throughout the province, but they have declared a state of emergency, and that may afford them certain logistical advantages. We've rolled into the map from BC Wildfire, and one of the areas that's been greatly affected, just plagued with fires this year, is around Highway 16, Fraser Lake, all the way to Nadina, and it's sending plumes of smoke towards Prince George and points east. Also, new fires are popping up. A few have been caused by people, but there's also a lot of lightning starts. Check the links below, go to BC Wildfire's map for your area and see if there's any new red dots that indicate new fires that you should be aware of. I like to look at the map first thing in the morning when I get up, see if anything's happened overnight, and then after supper time in the evening, I'll check it again. That's when the winds have died down, and any new startups that broke out in the afternoon, I'll be aware of those. Let's take a look at the NRC data for August 16th. These are screens captured first thing in the morning, so I can get an indication of what was growing overnight, where the most intensity is. We're looking at what was perceived on infrared for a day prior to 4:44 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now we're rolling into a screen that's just the last 12 hours prior to this. There's lots of recent heat in those red areas. Now we've rolled into the 6-hour map. This is 6 hours prior and the most recent incidents of fire perceived by this satellite system. So I'm going to jump into one of those areas of growth. This is around Olalla, to the west of Olalla, northwest of Karameas, along Highway 3 heading towards Headley. The fire appears to have expanded north and westward. We're now looking at the last 12 hours, and we can see where these areas of expansion may be. And now we're rolling to just 6 hours prior to when this data was captured, and we see the most recent indications of fire. Now let's jump to the opposite end of the province, to the far north around Dease Lake, Cassiar, Fort Nelson, and look at any expansion that may have occurred overnight. This is the 24-hour map, and now we're rolling into the 12-hour map, the most recent 12 hours. And now we are rolling into the 6-hour map, the most recent activity. It looks like the newest infrared is within those existing fire pockets. Now let's move to the central region of the province. This is west of Prince George, Fraser Lake, Burns Lake, Fort St. James, Vanderhoof, and we can also see Tweedsmuir towards the center bottom. We're looking at all the infrared in the 24 hours prior to when this data was captured. Now we're rolling into a screen of the last 12 hours. There's a lot of intensity in those fire pockets and a lot of areas that are generating new infrared. Now we're going to roll into the 6 hours prior to when the data was captured and see where the most recent activity is. North of Fraser Lake at the Shovel Lake fire, each of those zones is showing some new generation of heat. Let's move down to South Caribou, Gold Country, take a look at the area around Kamloops, 100 Mile House, and we are perceiving some infrared on the left-hand portion of your screen. Those fires are perceived by this system. Now we'll look at the 12 hours prior to the capture of the data. And now the most recent 6 hours, the new infrared being displayed. So much quieter in this region of the province. But there are fires active here, and the infrared can be obscured by smoke, haze, cloud. So we have to be careful about how we interpret the data. We've rolled into a screen of the southeastern portion of the province, the Okanagan, the Monashees, the Selkirks, Purcells, and Rockies, all the way over to Alberta. And in the 24-hour map, we can see all the incidents of fire perceived for the day prior. Now we're looking at a screen of just the last 12 hours. And this lets us know what fires are generating new heat. And is the new heat within those earlier fire pockets? Now we've moved into a screen of the last 6 hours, looking much better. Not a lot of new heat being generated in the wee hours of the morning. However, again, data might be obscured by cloud or haze or smoke. We're moving west now out to Vancouver Island, looking at the northern portion of the island at a lot of new infrared being displayed in the last 24 hours. We're in a region southwest of Highway 19. There is some activity just to the north of Tassus. And the 24-hour map is showing these fire pockets caused by lightning stretch all the way up towards Port Alice. Now let's go to the 12 hours before the data was collected. I'm seeing fewer incidents of new fire. It's just kind of isolated to 4 existing perimeters. Now we're going to roll into the 6-hour map, and I'm just seeing 1 infrared hotspot. That's a good sign. Hopefully we're catching all the data available. We are now looking at the world. This is NASA's World View, looking at infrared throughout the planet. This is a shot from yesterday. I wanted to show you how much smoke is coming off of South America and Africa. We'll zoom in, and we can see smoke trailing northwards from Venezuela and Brazil. Now moving over to Africa, the haze is moving westwards out to the Atlantic Ocean. And we can see vast tracts of infrared being generated on the southeastern portion of the continent. Now let's move to our neck of the woods. This is British Columbia center screen, and the general flow of the wind appears to be west to east. A lot of that smoke and haze is rolling into Alberta, Saskatchewan. And if we zoom into the southern portion of the province, considerable amount of smoke is rolling in from Washington State into the southern interior, the Okanagan. That's combining with the smoke from the Kootenays, and it's rolling towards Calgary, Red Deer, and points east. Going up to the central portion of the province, these are the fires on the Nechako Plateau, the Northern Caribou, Fraser Plateau, and completely obliterating Prince George from view. We can see these waves of particulate matter moving eastwards, and if we move up to the northern portion of the province, similar circumstance. The prevailing winds are moving from the west to the east and pushing the smoke with them, kind of in a high arc over the northern portion of Alberta. We've moved over to Windy now just to see if their data is also tracking this. We see these cloud patterns. British Columbia is in the center of the screen, and it's gathering off the west coast and then pushing everything eastwards. Is there a chance for precipitation? Not really in the next 5 days. Looks like the north coast might get some, and hopefully that heads over to Telegraph Creek. They could use some rain up there. I am seeing a few hopeful blue patches just to the south and west of Prince George, and then those are also moving eastwards. A lot of that wind flow indicated it's coming from the southwest, moving to the northeast. There's some variation in there. It's going to be changing whether you're on the hills or you're down in the valleys, and wind conditions are going to move around mountain ranges in different manners, but the general flow is from the southwest to the northeast. We've rolled into a screen showing temperature on Windy, and a lot of heat in Washington State, in southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan. We can see the heat moving up the center of British Columbia. But then in the northern portion, we are catching some of that green, some of those lower temperatures. So I'm hoping that's going to press down towards the center of the province, but it probably is going to get warmer in the central and southern parts of the province. Let's take a look at how that compares with the fire hazard on the NRC map. Here we're looking at the western portion of Canada. That big red patch in the center is the Nechako Plateau, Fraser Plateau, central British Columbia. But interestingly, down towards 100 Mile House, Kamloops, it's a lot cooler there in this fire warning data. So not as much fire hazard there. I've turned on the M3 hotspots, and we'll take a look at the area around Shovel Lake, Island Fire, and Francois Lake on the M3 system. This is where those great plumes of smoke were coming from on NASA's Worldview. Zooming in, we're looking at the data from today. Shovel Lake is just to the right of center of your screen. Francois Lake below that. There's just so many different fire fronts. This is an area that's really been hit hard this season. It's going to be very difficult for these communities to function with this going on in the forest surrounding them. Crews have been battling the south and southeast flanks, preventing eastward movement along the valleys. There have been some outbreaks that have stretched the fires eastwards. So let's take a look at the last couple days and see how the fire has progressed at Shovel Lake and then the Island Fire just to the southeast of that. We're starting on August 10th, and I'll just call the days as they happen. This is August 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and finally data that's showing up early for us on the 17th. So there was a reduction on the 16th, and those fire pockets appear to be aging in place, but with a greater intensity. They kind of swelled up a little bit. You may have also noticed another fire in the lower left-hand portion of the screen at Cheslada Lake, and it appears to have shown remarkable growth over the last few days. So we'll take a closer examination of that one. We'll run the same animation and put Cheslada Lake in the center. Here's on the 14th. Now the 15th. The 16th. And today. That was a significant growth of infrared over a short period of time. And it shows us how quickly a fire can build, grow, and start moving. 10, 15 kilometers is a very short distance when you're up on these high plateaus. So it's important to have your resources all together, items that you're going to need, medications. Plan out ahead of time how you're going to gather together pets and animals, livestock, and where you're going to go. What routes are you going to take if the wind's blowing from the west or if it's coming from the south? That's going to change the dynamic in a fire zone. So check with the links below with your regional district, check with BC Wildfire and find out where the evacuation notices are, what routes you're going to take, check with Drive BC. Before I leave you this evening, I'd like to just address what a modified response is. This is on the BC Wildfire Service website. The links are below. These are fire responses, and they're specific to what action will be taken. A modified response is when fire may actually be a benefit, or it's just too rugged and too remote to get in there. It's been perhaps naturally caused by lightning. So crews monitor the situation, and basically if there's no threat to any communities or life or limb, they let it burn itself out. There's a benefit to having fires. They clean the forest, so where possible, let nature take over. Thank you very much for watching. State of emergency in the province of British Columbia due to wildfires. Please be safe, everyone, and to all the crews and volunteers out there, you're my personal heroes. Keep your nose to the breeze.